Opinions and content of the show are those of the host, guests, and callers. They do not necessarily reflect those of Cook Broadcasting, LLC, its owners, partners, affiliates, assigns, or heirs. Having said that, it's now time to say good morning, St. Johns County. Welcome to the weekly radio show of the St. Johns County Council on Aging, better known in our community as the COA. We are your local nonprofit agency who for the past 52 years has been leading and advocating for the dignity and independence of seniors and responding to their changing needs. I'm Brian Robinson, Program Director for COA, broadcasting to you live from the studio WFOY 102.1 FM, your local radio station for news, sports, and talk. Before we get into our show, let me remind you, as I do each and every week, if you have a question, comment, or a suggestion for a radio show topic, you can send your email to radio@coasjc.org. Again, that's radio@coasjc.org. Or if you happen to be sitting at home at the moment listening to our show and you have a question, you can jump on your email and send it this morning. I have my email up in front of me. We'll try to work your question into the show as long as it's a good one. All right. Well, joining me this morning are two amazing women who have joined me on the show in the past, but this time they're on the show together. Dr. Sharon Glover and Dr. Bonnie Rogulj. Dr. Sharon Glover is an assistant professor in the occupational therapy programs at the University of St. Augustine for Health Sciences, with more than 30 years of clinical experience across settings, including hospitals, schools, and home health. Her work focuses on supporting older adults through areas such as aging in place, home modifications, and the environmental factors that influence daily function. A dedicated educator and researcher, Dr. Glover is actively involved in advancing occupational therapy practice at both the state and national levels. Dr. Bonnie Rogulj is an assistant professor in the physical therapy programs at the University of St. Augustine for Health Sciences and a board-certified geriatric specialist. She is passionate about improving health and wellness for older adults with research interest in aging, fall prevention, and higher education. In addition to her academic role, she is actively engaged in community outreach initiatives that promote safety and mobility for aging population. Ladies, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you on the show. I've had you separately in the past, and so I thought, boy, it would be great to tag team and have you both on the show together. And because one of you is very knowledgeable with occupational therapy and the other with physical therapy. Not to say that you don't both know those things, right? But I thought it would be good to have you both on together. And so let's kind of start off, if we could, just helping our listeners understand the basics. How would you explain in simple terms what occupational therapy is and physical therapy is, and the unique roles that each plays in patient care, especially for older adults?
Okay, well, this is Dr. Glover. I'll go first and talk about occupational therapy. Occupational therapy, in the name itself, is where our focus is, and that is occupation. And I'll tell you, most people, especially our older adults, when I first introduce myself, they say, well, honey, I'm retired, or I don't have a job, or I'm not looking for a job. When we say occupational therapy, we're talking about all the things that you do that occupy your day. So from the time you get up in the morning and you go through your morning routine and you cook, or you take the dog for a walk, or you go out and visit with your friends, or you take a nap, all of those things, those are all the occupations. And so what we look at as occupational therapy is how you're able to do those things and what might be barriers to your performance. Those barriers might be things like maybe you fell and broke your arm, and so now you can't use your arm. Or maybe a barrier is the house that you live in, and it makes it difficult for you to get in and out of the tub. And so we look at all of those things, those personal things that are part of you, and then those external things that are part of the environment, and how we can make that better so that you can live as independently and as purposefully, as you can in your life.
And you probably get that often with the occupational therapy,
all
right?
the time.
That's exactly where my mind goes. I'm thinking, okay, how is this helping with my occupation? So it's kind of like we need to rename it.
Yeah, we've actually, for many, many years, since I've been an occupational therapist, every so often that comes up with changing the name. Nobody's ever come up with a better choice for us. So
we're stuck with it.
We're going to embrace it and just keep explaining it.
We're going to depend on somebody like you to explain it to us all.
Yep.
Thank you for that explanation. That was fantastic. Dr. Rogulj, would you give us a good explanation of physical therapy?
Yes. So to put it into simple terms, physical therapists or healthcare professionals were part of this interdisciplinary team where we diagnose and we treat movement dysfunction. And so this really helps to optimize health and well-being throughout the lifespan. Physical therapists, they have expertise in movement, and so this guides their ability to be active, to participate, to do things that they want to do throughout their life. So it really contributes to a higher quality life.
Well, I have a lot of great questions that we're going to get into, and so we're going to jump right into one that comes right back to you, Dr. Rogulj. Your background includes becoming a board-certified geriatric specialist and completing a geriatric residency. So my first question to you is, what drew you to focus your career and research on older adult populations?
Well, just going back and thinking about my childhood, I can think about my mom. And my mom, she was very active in our church. And so she would do a lot with the elders of the church. She would have us actually go into the community and we would serve in the community. We would go to senior homes and do visits and just sit and chat and play checkers and do things like that. And we were also just very close as a family. And so going and spending time with my grandparents, who we lovingly called Granny and Pawpaw, that was just a part of my everyday life. And so watching this and having my mom really feel comfortable around just the older population and thinking of them as treasures and realizing the value that they bring, the knowledge that they have, and just being there to support them during this sort of end stage of life as well. That was just something that was natural for us and that, we should be doing in our life and thinking about how to, treat others. And so being around that very early on and feeling comfortable, that was just something that I knew was just a part of my life and something that I was passionate for. And so as I started to think about careers, and I was also swimming at the time, I became more aware of physical therapy as I was doing rehabilitation on my shoulder. And so just putting these different pieces of my life together, by the time I got into my physical therapy program at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia, that is when I had a friend of mine that said, Bonnie, you love our old people. You need to start working with the older adults, with geriatrics. Have you ever thought of doing a residency? And so her name is Dr. Brittany Samolsky. She is a licensed physical therapist practicing in Virginia and has always been a friend and mentor. And so I just decided to apply for the geriatric residency program, and that's what led me to Florida. So I moved from Virginia to Florida for the residency. And it has just been an amazing opportunity that has opened doors. And it definitely led me to being able to pursue a passion of mine, which is just giving higher quality of life to seniors and helping and learning more about preventing falls.
And I'm sure as a child, when you went in and were around the seniors, they probably just lit up every time that they got to interact with you. Because I know I was in ministry for a number of years up in West Virginia, and one of the things that we did is once a month we would go into an assisted living facility and we would do a service. And from time to time we would bring our kids with us, and they just loved having the kids there. They just lit up when they got to see. They love having somebody come in just in general, but when the kids come in, that was very special to them. So I'm sure you probably felt that as a child.
I can remember just giving them hugs. And my mom, she, would always make sure everything was okay and safe as we would go in. But just spending time and realizing just the value of a person's life and making that connection and that it was meaningful and important. And I saw her take that time and just treating each person with, just recognizing that this is a human being and making that time and connection. And so I saw that very early on, and I saw the response of, what that did for a person and just making them feel that way.
Yeah, and then that worked in your heart and developed a passion to lead you where you are today.
It was definitely a seed that was planted. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, well, it's time for our first commercial break, so we're going to go ahead and do that. We got lots more questions as we continue our conversation, and we'll be right back after these messages. And welcome back to the weekly radio show, the St. Johns County Council on Aging, here on WFOY 102.1 FM. Your local radio station for news, sports, and talk. I want to give a shout out to anybody from the University of St. Augustine for Health Sciences who might be tuning in and listening this morning. And I just want to give a shout out to your students. They are amazing. They come to our senior centers, and the seniors just light up when they come. And it's just such a great partnership that we have with the university. So big shout out to all the students and faculty and staff that might be tuning in this morning. We're continuing our conversation with Dr. Sharon Glover and Dr. Bonnie Rogulj, both professors there at the university. And let's see, our next question is for you, Dr. Glover. And your research focuses on areas like aging in place, environmental impacts on daily function, and home modifications. topics that are so important for older adults to understand as they strive to maintain independence. So would you explain why these areas are critical and how they can directly impact an older adult's ability to live safely and confidently?
Yes. I think it's interesting is people as humans, we are so good at compensating and adapting. We can't do something. So we work really hard to figure out other ways to do things to keep being independent with it. And sometimes that means that we're working really hard against the environment that we live in. You think about as we grow, we get taller, we change our abilities, we're able to do different things, but our homes don't really change. You know, you bought a 2-story house, it's still a 2-story house 30 years later, but now maybe it's a little harder to go up the stairs, and we don't think about those things as much as we think about, well, how can I change? And so I look at it and I think all of these people, when I worked in nursing homes, I've worked in many, many nursing homes, a lot of people came to the nursing home because they couldn't live in their house anymore. There was something in the house that prevented them from being independent. They couldn't go up the steps. They couldn't get in the tub. They weren't able to do whatever it was. There was something in the house. And so they ended up, it was like your only other option was the nursing home. And people kind of gave up. And having worked in nursing homes, I don't want you to think it's a bad thing to go to a nursing home. There's some really good therapy in nursing homes and reasons for that, and they can provide a lot of positives. But that started me thinking about what is it about the environment that is keeping them from doing something at home that they're able to do here. So in the nursing home, the person was able to get dressed, but at home they couldn't. And so I started looking at those aspects of how the environment supports performance, how it really helps us to do better, and how the environment can be a barrier to the performance. At the time I was starting to look at that, aging in place was becoming a really big thing, and people were talking about that. And it was the idea of, we'll put grab bars in and put handrails in. And I'm sorry to say that just putting a grab bar in is not going to change everything. It could be really important. But I started looking at the whole environment, the flooring, the stairs, the surfaces, how high things were, what the person actually needed to do, and how we could help adjust those things in the environment. And a lot of times people think, oh, I have to move. I can't live in my home any longer. I have to move out, or I have to pay for this major renovation to my home. And really, we are so lucky right now. There are so many tools and equipment and different things that are available that even a very small change can be the difference from a person staying in their home and functioning there and somebody who has to leave and go into some type of an institutional setting. So that's really what I'm looking at. I do a lot of grab bars with people. I spend a lot of time in people's bathrooms, but I also spend a lot of time with them outside because if I can move around in my house, but I never get to leave, that is really bad. And so one of the aspects of aging in place is not just being able to stay in your home, but being able to stay in your community. And so as Dr. Rogulj was talking about, being with her mother and everything, and I thought about when I was growing up and how we did a lot of activities from our church with the older adults and how it was so important to those older couples and individuals to come to church, and all of the extra grandparents I had from the older people there. And that we had one lady who one day she didn't come to church, and I was like, well, where is she? And they're like, oh, she just can't be getting out of the house anymore. And I was like, well, let's go over and get her then. And it's like looking at that things, and in talking to her, one of the things she said, she's like, well, I just don't really want to be a bother. And I'm like, but we want to see you. So having people getting around in their community, I said, let's go beyond just the walls of the house and let's look at aging for the whole community. And I'm going to put a plug in for the COA. I think the activities that you guys do at the COA, how everyone is able to come, how you have the van that can pick people up, how so many of those people are still driving and coming. It's like that is part of aging in place, having that community for them. So I think it's the home, and definitely we want to look at your home, but we also want to think community.
That's fantastic. Well, so speaking of home modifications, Dr. Rogulj, fall prevention is something you're especially passionate about, and it's truly a critical issue, particularly for older adults. And this one really hit home for me when I read this article that recently said that roughly 1 in 4 seniors who suffer a hip fracture will die within 1 year. And the reason it hit home is because my mother fell, broke her hip, and within 2 years passed away. And so I read that and I was like, wow, what a statistic that really underscores how serious a fall can be. Can you talk about why prevention is so important and what practical steps individuals and caregivers can take to reduce that risk?
Yes, and you and I had spoken about this, and it is unfortunately a common injury and a very, very serious injury. And sometimes it's not just this isolated incident. It's something that's much more complex, and it has a lot of different factors that can play into this. And then once you have the adverse event, like the fall, occur, that can start a cycle. And so having this event, having then a fear of falling, being less active, decreasing your physical activity, having a decline in your health and now becoming deconditioned, that's just going to further increase your risk for falling. And so this cycle that occurs, that is something that as physical therapists and occupational therapists, being able to try to break the cycle, being able to find these different factors that led to the event, the accident. And again, they can span across a lot of different body systems. And so some practical steps can be participating in physical and occupational therapy. There can be goals to be able to improve strength, be able to improve balance, coordination, just knowledge of safety, such as in your home environment, how to perform self-care management, other systems that we need to consider. So being able to participate in an annual eye exam, having your medications managed, and so other roles within our disciplinary team, such as pharmacists and low vision specialists, being able to monitor your vitals, just a shift in your blood pressure, having a drop in your blood pressure. So having a cardiologist, nursing staff, being able to wear proper footwear. And so in your home and in the community, that also can cause for an increased fall risk. And so having a podiatrist as well for an exam if needed. And then seeking assistance for maybe if there's been a change in your cognition. And so your ability to have your memory and the way that you're thinking normally, having that decline, or noticing that there's been a change in mood. Depression can also increase fall risk. And so a lot of times older adults will tell me, I just thought this was a normal part of aging. I just thought that having to use the bathroom more often was a normal part of aging. And so being able to talk to your healthcare providers, having screening and further assessments, and being able to identify these different factors that, again, can be able to have that overall impact on the body and the different systems, and then being able to address them so that we can reduce that cycle from occurring, stop the cycle to the best of our ability.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and, for my mom, she was out on her back porch. She was watering some flowers that were hanging baskets, and there was a rug that was rolled up, and that's what she tripped over, and that's how she broke her hip. And so it's so important to be, proactive around your home and really kind of look around and say, mm-hmm. okay, what is a tripping hazard? And taking care of that before it becomes a bad fall.
Yeah, bad cycle.
Yeah. All right. Well, the music means it's time for our next commercial break. We will continue our conversation right after this. You're listening to the Weekly Radio Show, the St. Johns County Council on Aging. And welcome back to the Weekly Radio Show, the St. Johns County Council on Aging, here on WFOY 102.1 FM, your local radio station for news, sports, and talk. I'm Brian Robinson, Program Director for COA. And before we continue on with our show this morning, let me inform you that next week in the studio, I will have Brock Bertolo with the Flagler Oars and Discover and Recover St. John's. He is the Executive Director, so tune in next week, same time, same place, right here on WFOY 102.1 FM for that conversation. All right, well, today's conversation is with Dr. Sharon Glover and Dr. Bonnie Rogulj with the University of St. Augustine, and we're going to continue on our conversation, and this next question is for both of you, and so your combined perspectives, if you would, in answering this question. Why is it so important that patients stick with and complete their occupational and physical therapy? And how does that make a difference in their recovery and daily lives?
Well, I guess it's so important that you do that because it's so important that we stay active. If you're an active person, and activity is different for everybody, but if you're an active person, your body is working and all of your systems are working, and you notice when you need more assistance. As occupational therapists and as our physical therapy colleagues would say, we are experts at assessing your body, your function, your ability to do things, to recognize where you need some assistance, where we can support you in doing better. And so when you've got an occupational therapist, or you have a physical therapist, or in the best case scenario, you have both of us, we can really look at what you need to do, what you want to do, how you're doing that, and set up a program that will support you to be successful. That alone, just coming to therapy, coming to therapy once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, isn't enough, though. You still have to do the work outside of therapy, because our bodies are always growing, developing, changing, and we want to support all of that. So taking what our expertise gives you during the session, but then applying that outside of the session, doing your exercises at home. And I'm with you, exercise isn't always exciting or fun, but, we do it. Doing those things outside of it is what's going to really make your recovery a positive recovery.
We also need to consider reversibility. And so just being able to retain those benefits, we need to continue to really challenge our body's system. And so sticking with it, considering this impact on our overall health, our cardiovascular system, our neuromuscular system, our musculoskeletal system. And so being able to stick with it and complete it, a lot of times we do not give it the adequate time to really make a meaningful difference. So, for example, thinking about our musculoskeletal system and our muscles as they're being challenged, we're going to start to see improvements over periods of 4 to 8 weeks. For balance, as our neurological system is working, usually the evidence will cite that we need to be working for 12 plus weeks with 50 hours dedicated to this. An article specifically stated 56 hours. And so being able to really give adequate time to make a meaningful difference means sticking with it. And then thinking about retaining those benefits, continuing to challenge your body system. If we're not using it, then we're losing it. And so being able to consider that our body needs to be challenged, and physical and occupational therapy can give you the tools to do that, to really make this a lifestyle and to find ways that it's meaningful to you so that you are prioritizing this.
And I think that meaningful piece is something that we say a lot in therapy, but maybe we don't say it enough to you when you come to see us. But it is so important to us to know what is meaningful to you, because then we can develop the program for you to have meaning to you. Say that you enjoy dancing. Instead of us saying, let's go and do, exercises at the gym, maybe instead we find a way for you to dance, because the dancing is going to get you those same exercises plus the additional benefit of the balance and all of those other things. So we really want to know what's important to you so that we can develop a therapy program and goals that will meet that for you and help you to stay motivated to it. Because if it's not interesting to you, you don't really want to do it. So we want to make sure it can be as interesting as possible and as meaningful as possible.
No, I want to tie in the mental aspect of it, because just from personal experience, right? So I do a 3.5 mile workout 3 times a week. Okay. And at one point back in the fall, I was running the entire 3.5 miles. But as you know, it's hard to stay at that level, right? And it's a mental challenge. And so my workout now is more of a walk a little bit, run a little bit, walk a little bit, run a little bit. And even doing that is still, like, I got to be mentally prepared to do that. So there's the mental aspect of people mentally wanting to do the therapy, right? But then there's also, and I remember this with my grandmother, she had a stroke and they were trying to do therapy with her, and she was scared to do it because she was scared that she would fall. And so I kind of want to bring that aspect into it. What role do physical and occupational therapists play in helping older adults mentally prepare for therapy? And how do you build confidence and motivation in patients who may feel anxious or uncertain about the process?
Such an important piece. People fall or something happens. And we were just talking about strokes with the students this week. And I said to them, everyone sees the physical problem. They see that they can't use their arm as well or their leg doesn't work as well. But there are these sort of hidden issues, and that's where that mental issue comes into it, of getting motivated, staying motivated, and then getting over the fear. Because when something happens, it's scary. It's scary that your body doesn't work the way that it used to work, that it doesn't do the things that you want it to do. And so I think part of our education with our students, part of the education of becoming a therapist, addresses how to support your client, how to give them positive motivational statements, how to demonstrate things in a way, and how to physically support them through that. I'm never going to have somebody get up and do something if they're afraid they're going to fall the moment they stand up. So we'll build up to that. Maybe we'll do some things sitting, and then they'll get stronger, and then they'll feel stronger with that. But we always really talk about how important it is that they have a confidence in it. And so part of our job is to build that confidence and to make sure that you feel like you can do those things. And that makes it very personal for each person. As Dr. Rogulj was saying, with the repetitions with the physical, the brain has that same thing. The brain needs repetitions of doing things over and over again to really learn that. And if you had like a stroke, especially, or something that affects the brain, we're looking at those brain pathways and how to change those brain pathways. In a very simplistic view, and just really super simplistic when we're talking about the brain, think about the brain pathways like the highway system. And if there is construction or there's a roadblock somewhere, your brain has to learn how to work around that roadblock. And that is a real challenge. And that is another aspect that we do in therapy, is we help you work around that challenge, maybe learning a new way to do something so that you feel like you're safe and that you can perform.
All right. Well, that music means it's time for our next commercial break. So perfect timing with that answer. All right. We'll be right back after these messages. You're listening to the weekly radio show of the St. Johns County Council on Aging. And welcome back to the weekly radio show of the St. Johns County Council on Aging here on WFOY 102.1 FM, your local radio station for news, sports, and talk. I'm Brian Robson, Program Director for COA, and this is our last segment in our conversation with Dr. Sharon Glover and Dr. Bonnie Rogulj with the University of St. Augustine for Health Sciences. And just before the commercial break came on, we were talking about the importance of the mental aspect of it. And while we were having our commercial break, we were kind of keeping our conversation going. And Dr. Rogulj, you brought up the importance of confidence and measuring the confidence somebody has to help you gauge where they're at with what they can accomplish in their physical therapy.
Yes, and so just, continuing our discussion, we, shared that there's just growing literature that supports the role of confidence and building confidence among our older adult patients when it comes to fall prevention, and that we're doing a lot of other measures that sometimes look at that mobility or strength or a specific balance test, but actually screening their confidence, being able to establish rapport, being able to have that trust that we're building on helps to be able to accomplish our outcome measures and have a patient become more compliant in their sessions. And so over time, just being able to have this nice connection and relationship and helping them to support them to build confidence as we go through our treatment is so key. Really meeting the patient where they're at. But as a physical therapist who is interested in fall prevention and trying to reduce fall risk, understanding that I need to really screen confidence as well. That needs to be a part of my overall treatment, and that needs to be incorporated and built into the rehabilitation process.
All right. Well, let's shift our focus now to the future, if we could. Dr. Glover, you have more than 30 years of experience across a wide range of occupational therapy settings. How have those experiences shaped the way you teach and mentor students, and how are you preparing them for the future of occupational therapy?
This is such a difficult question, because every time I think about students, I change it a little bit because students are so individual. But when I think about my experience, one of the things that I try to be clear with our students about is getting to know their clients as a person. They're not the hip replacement in room 27. They're not the lady who had a stroke yesterday, but getting to know them personally, what's important to them, what they value, what they want to do. And then for our students to recognize how to assess the person and the environment and what it is that they're looking at, what they're seeing, and what that means to the person. Because if you can get a good assessment, what they're able to do, where they're having their difficulties, what systems in the body are being more affected, is it more of a musculoskeletal issue? Is it more of a neurological issue? Understanding that information and then putting that with your client really helps us be better. I tell our students that we are one chapter in the book of that person's life. And maybe we join them in chapter 5, but by chapter 6, we're gone. Maybe we're with them for chapters 5, 6, and 7, but then again, we're gone. Maybe we come back in chapter 10, but we're part of their life. And the idea is that we're preparing them to continue that life where they want to go when we're no longer part of it with us. That our part is there. We're an important character, but we're not the main character of the book. And so for us to be that support person, to really pay attention to the person, know them well, and help them move forward.
Well, I love that metaphor that, you're helping them write the chapter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe you're helping them write chapter 5 at this point in their life with the goal of, so that chapter 10 is a chapter of vibrancy.
Exactly.
Right? And they're back to dancing, or they're back to out in their yard, gardening, or whatever it is that they love to do, right? So what you're doing in chapter 5 is helping make sure chapter 10 is a great chapter that they have in their life. So I love that. That's fantastic. All right. Well, continuing our focus on the future, Dr. Rogulj, if you could design, this is a tough question, if you could design the future of physical therapy for older adults, what would be on your wish list, and what changes or innovations would make the biggest difference?
This is a tough question. I just go back to this quote, and I've heard this in different, ways, shapes, and forms, but to make a difference, you just have to care. So we don't want to lose our human connection. That is truly irreplaceable in this fast-paced world with an advancing healthcare profession. We need to still make time for others. We need to reach out to our loved ones. We need to listen actively with the intention of understanding. We want to maintain that connection. And then as we're, going through and seeing the needs of others, we need to take action. And so just as we had mentioned previously, finding available resources that can support those in needs, taking action for that, being an advocate for others, your patients, your clients, your community, your profession, being a lifelong learner, challenging yourself, learning new things, applying them. And then this goes back to ancient Greece, and it still holds true. We need to keep moving. Movement is our medicine. And so really, as I think about just the profession and where it's going, we still just want to care. We want to make a difference, and we need to take action. And that can be done in a lot of different ways.
Well, I love the fact that you bring out the importance of human connection, because that's what we're doing at St. Johns County Council on Aging, right? We're helping seniors remain connected to their community. That's why we have 5 senior centers throughout the county. And one day we hope to start more, right? We have lots of different services and programs. Last year, we served 4,300 seniors through the programs and services that we do. And that's just the ones that we counted, right? Because we get multiple phone calls throughout the day. There's a lot of people that we help, and maybe we can't help, but we send to somebody else that can help. And they just love that connection. We had a case manager in our independent living services department, and that department, what they do is they coordinate with the companies that we contract with to go into the homes and provide the in-home services. So maybe they're helping them with cooking or bathing or house cleaning, or maybe taking them to the pharmacy to get their prescriptions or whatever it may be, right? And so this amazing group in our independent living services department, they help coordinate all that. But one of the things that they have to do is they go to the client's home and they have to do an assessment, and they do this for some of our clients, it's twice a year. For some, it's once a year. Just depends on which funding source that they're under. But one of the case managers was telling me she was out to see one of her clients, and they got to the end of the assessment, and the client said, "Would you just stay a little bit longer? I just love talking to you." And it just And she was like, absolutely, right? But there's just that connection is so important. And I think that's very important for your students to keep that in mind, right? When you
Absolutely.
when you are working with somebody, especially a senior, that connection can make a huge difference, right? And because especially if they're at that place, like they're at a vulnerable state, right? They've injured themselves, or maybe they've lost a limb, right? And they are like in a situation that they've never been in before, and they are very vulnerable, and they're at a point where what they need is that human connection, right? Like AI is a big thing, but AI is never going to be a human, right? There's just something about the way that we're able to connect with one another, right? Like I think of the fact that we're in the studio doing this interview right now, and this has such a different feeling than if we were doing it on Zoom, right? Because when you're in the presence of somebody else, there is that human connection. And so maybe somebody's out there, they're trying to build robots, and the robots are going to be the physical therapists and occupational therapists, but they will never be human. They will never be able to have that human connection. And I believe that that is so important for your students to realize that when they are with that person, like you said, it's not just the person with the broken hip in room 25. It is a person with a story. There's a reason that they're there, and getting to know that person will make such a big difference in how well that person responds to the therapy, correct?
Oh, yeah.
100% agree.
Yeah.
It's never replaceable.
It's that if you can't connect, you could be the best therapist ever, but the person is not going to make the changes that they make when they connect with it, because that connection, sometimes it's like we'll come in and they'll be like, I did this because I wanted you to be proud of me, or I wanted you to do, it's like they want that connection back. And it's just, I just enjoy the older adult population so much. I think since I was a kid, I like them a lot. And I just, the stories to tell, the things that they've done, the potential that's there. It's not like you turn 65 and yeah, that's it. I'm going to go sit in a chair somewhere. That's not the people that I meet. Yeah.
And the goal is that we want them to live all the way to 100 or older, but to be vibrant. All right. Well, that music means it's time for our show to end. Thank you both for being here. Great conversation.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
and
you.
Again, thank you to the University of St. Augustine for Health Sciences and all that you do, and all the students that are out there that come and help our seniors in our senior centers and other programs that we do. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you back here next week. Thank you.